Thank you, Ron. You stole my thunder, so there's really nothing else to tell. No, it's a pleasure to be here. It's always just an honor to stand in front of men who follow Jesus Christ. In a world that our culture has decided to make myself God rather than the true God, we have a battle in front of us, and it's an important battle, and it's a battle for souls. And I am fortunate that I get to be on that battlefield every day. But that's just entitled, because every one of us are in that battle every day. And I want to challenge you this morning that a lot of you have lived a lot of life, and you have a lot of experience, and that experience is important, and that experience needs to be passed on. And so as I get toward the end of my talk this morning, I'm going to challenge you to be involved and get involved, whether that be in schools through FCA or whatever avenue that may be. It's important that we all walk out that faith that God has given us and that responsibility of pursuing that each and every day. I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I'll share a name with you, Ben Taylor. You've never heard that name. If you have, it's probably not the Ben Taylor that I'm talking about. When I was 7 years old, my dad was taking me to sign up for Little League Baseball in a little rural town in Mississippi. And I didn't want to play T-ball. I was like, Dad, I want to play big boy baseball. I didn't want to hit it off a tee. I wanted to be challenged. And so he talked the people in the league to put me in the 9 and 10-year-old league at 7 years old. And obviously I wasn't ready for it. But this older black gentleman in South Mississippi in 1979 took this little white kid and treated me like his own. He gave me extra practices. We'd show up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon with his son and me on the baseball field, just us two, and he spent time with me. And, as I reflected and I started thinking about how I was going to share, kind of my story today, I started thinking about Ben Taylor. And to be honest with you, I probably hadn't thought of him in years. But he really started the journey for me on being an athlete, on being a coach, and now being the director for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. It was a coach that impacted my life, a coach that took time with me when he didn't have to, and probably in a world that he grew up in that was very, very different from mine. But he saw through that and saw potential in me. And from that point on, I was inspired, but I was encouraged, and I was able to take that love and passion I had for, back then it was baseball, and be able to grow into to an athlete, and to eventually where I am today. And a lot of us have stories, and you guys have different stories than mine, and you may have a similar story than mine. But there's been people in our lives that have spoken into our lives in different ways. Coaches have a very, very unique ability to do that. It's often said that coaches have more of an influence on kids' lives than sometimes their parents. And they get that audience, and they have an audience that's eager and willing and wanting to listen to whatever they're speaking into them. Unfortunately, some of those coaches aren't giving a great message. Some are, and I'm glad that they are. And I was fortunate to have a lot of those coaches. But some don't have that option because their coach hasn't been mentored or hasn't understood the responsibility that they have. And so in my position, I get to be an influence of the influencers, which is a super, super important position that I've been put in. But a little bit about my journey, after playing baseball at 7 years old and not getting a hit the whole entire season, and just kind of learning that you have to be humble before you can blossom. And but I grew into an athlete that had a lot of success in high school. I was able to be an all-state player in basketball and football and baseball, and for myself in my high school, was able to have a lot of influence on those around me. But at 16 years old, I realized that this sports thing that I was doing was really, really cool, but had become an idol in my life and had become what I think a lot of us look at as sports in our culture today has become an idol, especially this time of the year when, I could start spitting off college football names, and a bunch of you in here would get really excited really quick. We get excited about sports, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think oftentimes we put it in the wrong order of our life. And for me, at the end of my sophomore year in high school, I started to realize that there was things more important than just the sports that I played and the notoriety that I got from that. And growing up in a small town, and those of you that know small town, and especially in the South, if you're the local hero and you get a lot of attention, and you start thinking that you might be as good as what the press talks about. But I realized through relationships with some of my best friends, they would invite me to church, and I would go because they would be playing sports on Wednesday nights or on Sunday nights, and so I went, maybe for the wrong reasons, but when I was there, I was listening, and the Lord captured my heart in a very unique way at really a very crucial time in my life where I was really starting to establish myself as an elite athlete, but God got a hold of me and made me realize at that point in time that I had a responsibility to love Him first. And, I can't say that I got it right. I gave my life to Christ at 16, but it's been a journey, like many of you could probably say as well. It's been a journey for all of us. I wasn't discipled really well. Grew up in a small country church where once you walked down the aisle and they dunked you and you were baptized, it was like, all right, good luck, go chase God, and so discipleship wasn't always the best. But I do remember having good Christian coaches and people in my community that held me accountable and helped me walk that path. And I'm thankful for those people today, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them and them engaging in my life and allowing me to be important to them when they didn't have to. But a lot of my coaches were those people. And now I didn't always have great coaches, but I had good men that spoke into my life. And I think that's more important than the X's and O's a lot of times. So I was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship to play football at the University of Southern Mississippi. For me, I loved basketball. Basketball was my true love, and I really wanted to play that. But as you can look at, I wasn't really what the Division I schools were looking for as a college basketball player. And I was from the deep South in Mississippi, so everybody wanted me to play football, because that was what was king. But I went to Southern Miss to play football, had a great career as a 4-year starter. As Ron stole my thunder earlier, I caught Brett Favre's last college touchdown pass in the 1990 All-American Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama. So that was kind of a neat thing back then, and then he had this wonderful career in the NFL, so I've kind of used that line for, not that I did anything really important, but because of who he is, I guess I get to take a little bit of that glory. But I had a really good career, but when I was in college, it was me kind of battling that still that identity. We get our identity sometimes in who we are and what we do instead of through Christ. And that was a battle for me. I did use my platform a lot in college. I was able to speak to churches and be able to speak to young athletes in the area and stuff. And so I wouldn't say it was a wash or it was something that I wish I could go back and redo. But I do know that it was a battle for me. And I share all that with you because I want to kind of set the stage for me. I know what it felt like to be an athlete. And I think a lot of you can probably still remember, if you played sports, you have a story about a coach or about an experience that you had on a team. And those are deep-rooted memories. And a lot of times the coaches that you had could have been a negative influence in your life. It could have pushed you away from sports. It could pushed you away from God in a lot of ways because of the experience that you went through, and somebody claimed to be something that they weren't. And so I know there's a lot of different stories that you guys could tell, but for me, the story that really hit home for me is knowing that God always had my heart and always had more for me than just what was on the football field or on the basketball court or on the baseball diamond. I knew that he had a bigger purpose for me. And so as I finished up my college career and realized that, it was probably going to be over at that point, even though I did have an opportunity to try out for 3 different professional sports and make none of them. So I have a very unique story. I got to go to a free agent tryout with the Texas Rangers and didn't get a call back. And, got an opportunity to play college football at a high level as a 4-year starter. And then through injuries and things, even tried the Arena Football League and got hurt at training camp. And I was like, yep, I'm out for that. And basketball, I said after college was over, I was like, well, those 2 things didn't work out. Let me try basketball, and actually made a basketball league. Back then was the American Major Basketball League, and it was like 8 teams in the United States, this real strong league that by the time I made the team, the league had already folded. So, it was, we chase our dreams and we try, different avenues. And for me, it was just like, okay, it's time to go to work. I need to do what God's called me to do, and that was coaching. I knew when my career was over, that was what I was going to do. I had always admired coaches, and it was important for me, and it's still important to me today, to be called coach. I take that as an honor because I know how important that role is. And so from my first year coaching in 1996 up until a year ago before I took this position, I coached a lot of sports and coached a lot of athletes and have a lot of stories that I could tell about that relationship with my players. The one thing that I couldn't tell you is my record. I have no idea what my coaching record is. I was a head coach a lot of years. I was assistant coach a lot of years. My purpose for coaching was to transform young lives. That was a passion for mine from the get-go, and I can't take credit for that. And you have to understand that that's not me. I'm selfish in nature. But God gave me a passion for young people, and I tried to take every opportunity I could as a coach to pour into those young athletes. And the rewards that have come my way over the last 25 years, because of that, I just can't even count. 2 years ago, I had a young man that called me out of the blue, connected on social media, and called me up, and it's like, hey, and it's really neat because his name was Stephen King. So it's not a name you really forget, but he was an athlete that I coached my very first year. And he said, Coach, do you remember me? And I said, yeah, I remember you. I can't forget your name. You kind of have a famous name. But he said, he was, at that time, I think he was 40 years old, and he had a family. And he said, I just want to reach out to you and say thank you. And I was like, wow. I didn't know the impact I was having. I do now as I'm older, and I've kind of had time to reflect and look back on my life. But it's been really unique to be able to go through story after story, athlete after athlete that I've coached. Another story that just kind of sticks in my mind all the time is I was an offensive coordinator at a high school in Mississippi, and I had a senior who had been a 2-year starter at quarterback, and his senior year I decided to move him to wide receiver and move a sophomore in his place at quarterback. And he was actually fine with it. His mom was not. And she let me know in language that I won't repeat here, and more than one occasion. And we didn't win. We didn't do well. We didn't have a good season. But I can remember years later when he comes back, he's finished college and he comes back, he found me. I was at a different school at that time. And I think it was just random. We just ran into each other. And he said, Coach, I just think about my senior year all the time. He said, I just had the time of my life. He's like, I really appreciate you. I appreciate how I know that my mom wasn't always happy with you, but I was really just, I just had such a great time. And what it was is his parents had put so much pressure at him at quarterback, he didn't want to play it. And he wanted to, and he was our leading receiver that year and had a great season. But, those are just stories that I tell because coaches matter and coaches make a difference. And for us, and for me now, working for Fellowship of Christian Athletes, it's like, I want these coaches to understand my story. I want them to understand the impact that they have. There's thousands of athletes, as you can see on the flyer that I put on your table, that we serve just in Williamson County. Over 14,000 athletes just in this county alone that our teams serve. And that's just middle school and high school. That's not counting our recreation sports, our travel sports. I mean, it probably is in the 30s to 40s to maybe 50,000 kids that are playing sports at some level, and somebody is coaching those kids. And that's why I love the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, because we are the coaches of coaches. We are the influencers of the influencers, and we have the opportunity to grow not just the coaches, but the athletes as well. And we're in 30 different schools, or we have 30 different schools in Williamson County that have middle school and high school that have athletic teams. And right now, we have an influence in 24 of those 30 schools. And there's 3 more that are in the works right now. So I'm very proud of that fact because we have an influence on that campus, and we have an opportunity as a Christian organization that is the only Christian organization that's still allowed on the campus of a public school. And so with that becomes, as Spider-Man's uncle would say, with what is it, great responsibility, or with, I can't even say the quote now, but you get what I'm saying is that we have an important job to do and a great opportunity to really influence a lot of athletes and a lot of coaches on a lot of campuses just right here in our backyard. One of the ways that we do that is that we have a multi-sport huddle, and which means that they meet once a week in the mornings. They'll have guest speakers come in, and they'll have even small groups from time to time. And it's just a time for not just athletes, but just students. And we invite non-athletes. And we want that, and we encourage that at all our schools. Again, because we're the only Christian organization that's doing that on campus, we want to engage all of the students. So we use our athletes because they're the influencers. And a lot of times they can get kids there that maybe others couldn't. And we use that time as a time of encouragement. And, a lot of times the gospel will be shared. And we've had kids walk away from a morning FCA session at a Williamson County school and gave their life to the Lord. And that's a praise right there. Just alone in our county last year, we saw over 40 kids make decisions to follow Christ through FCA events, just the things that we did here in Williamson County. And so that's something to be very proud of. But it's just the tip of the iceberg of where we are and where we're going and what we can do. God's hand's been on this ministry for a very long time. Since 1954, FCA began, and it's still going strong today. And that's not because of people like me. It's because God wants it to be successful. And so when you meet someone from FCA, it's been really neat for me because I've only been a part of FCA for 14 months. And the people I meet are some of the most humble, servant people that I've ever met in my life. And so it's a responsibility now that I'm in these shoes that I continue that legacy and continue to push hard and to make sure that we are prepared and that we are looking towards the future, because our kids' souls are at stake. And I really mean that. There's less kids that are going to church these days than probably ever has been, especially in the Bible Belt in this area. We have so many unchurched families, so many families that God is not even a piece of what they have grown up with. A lot of that's because we're a place where we're a melting pot. You guys know. We have people moving. A lot of you have moved here with different jobs and different opportunities, and Nashville's a growing and a great area to live in. But with that means that there's even a bigger responsibility to share the gospel, because we don't know if our neighbor knows who Jesus is. When I grew up, that was different. Being a Christian was easy. Not easy, but it was popular. You know, I could walk around and say, yeah, I'm a Christian, and people would have respect for that. You walk in our public schools today, y'all, that's not the case, even here. You know, our school board's kind of liberal. You know, we have to be very careful about how we do things. We have to be above reproach in how we do everything that we do in our schools. But I'm thankful for that, because what we do is so important that we don't want to just do it flippantly. We want to do it well. And so the challenge is that we can't do it alone. And so I stand in front of you today saying, you know, we have a great opportunity as a character coach. And what is a character coach? It's like a team chaplain. It's someone that says, you know what? I'm at a point in my life where I can give back a little bit. I can spend a couple of hours a week, and I can spend time with some athletes, some coaches, and just love on them. I might even be able to share a devotion with them. Some coaches won't allow that. They just want you to do character lessons. So we do our character lessons, and we just don't share the Bible story. Or we don't tell them what the reference is in the Bible, but it's still the same story. But we're planting seeds. And so how do we get character coaches? People like you. People who love Jesus and maybe have a little bit of time. And that's all that it takes. And when we get people that are willing to do that, then we see life change. We had a young man at Page High School this year who was riding four-wheelers with his father. And the four-wheeler flipped over on top of his dad. And that football player at Page, unfortunately, watched his dad die. He couldn't do anything to help him. The second person that he called was his character coach on his football team. And I got a text from Neil, and Neil was like, yeah, I knew the responsibility that I had. I knew the impact I was having. But when that young man called me, before he called a lot of his family, he said, I knew then and there the impact that I was making. And I was thankful, and I'm thankful that he's there. But I need a lot of Neil Smiths. I need more. And so that may not be for you. That may not be something that's in the realm of possibility for you, but you may know somebody who is and who is willing. And I would say fill out those information index cards that I put on the table. Let me know, because the work is important, and we need workers, because we know that what's at stake. And what's at stake is these young athletes that are going to influence through the platform that they have. And we want that influence to be for Jesus Christ. So that's kind of my message this morning is, you know, I'm a guy that just was blessed to be an athlete, even more blessed to be a coach, and now even more blessed to lead a great organization, a great Christian organization that just wants to love on people, love on athletes, love on coaches, and give them an opportunity to grow in their faith and be, you know, the light of the world. So thank you.